News in this morning that Apple are finally bringing their hustle to podcasting. What's up, One Fine players? So what does that actually mean? What do we know? That they are now starting to have conversations with both talent, so podcasters already making content that they're talking to about going exclusively on the Apple Podcasts app, and also they're starting to think about making original content. It's not too much of a surprise considering the recent changes and developments in the podcasting world. They need to do something to keep their dominance and stay ahead. After all, it is Apple that brought us podcasts in the first place. The word podcast originates as a combination of the word iPod and broadcast. That's how it first ever came to be when they brought us the app back in the early noughties. You learn something new every day, eh? I guess that kind of makes sense when you think about the fact that they recently announced iTunes is breaking up and becoming 3 separate apps, so there'll be a real focus on Apple Podcasts. We made a video about that, link in description. In 2018, Apple quietly released the Podcast Analytics app, which really helps with insights and I guess was another tool in their arsenal for this growth. You can imagine that they're thinking about driving traffic to Apple Music. That's had lots of competition. Spotify, who will come on to in a minute, are breathing strongly down their neck, so I guess they'll want to grow Apple Music with the collaborations they did with people like Jay-Z and the exclusive deals they've done in Apple Music. You can see how that would logically fit to podcasts too. I guess they're probably thinking about where they can run ads in podcasts. Currently, they give you the player and don't run any of their own ads in any of our content. So I guess it would make sense to think that in the same way they do with the App Store, they would be doing the same with the podcast discovery features that they currently already own and we all use. So moving on to the impact of this announcement, well, the main obvious one is the drop in share price of Spotify by 2.7%. That is the biggest intraday decline in the platform for 3 weeks. Although, don't worry too much because they're 36% up in their share price since the beginning of the year. That's got to be to do with the huge announcements and push that Spotify has made this year. Podcasts specifically, they spent $400 million in the first 2 quarters of this year on podcasting products. They bought Gimlet and Anchor, and it's been widely reported. We've also made a video on that. You could go check it out. And they too have brought up talent such as Obama, Amy Schumer, and Joe Budden. The impact of Spotify's growth this year has led them to now having somewhere between 10 and 20% of all listens. They are breathing down Apple's neck, and Apple clearly know that. Should also give a quick mention to the announcement this week of a joint venture between Stitcher and Wondery called Podfront UK. They're going to be bringing monetization functions to podcasting in the UK. So Stitcher is an app. They are a player of podcasts. Wondery are a producer of podcasts best known for making their true crime content. And they apparently are going to be allowing you to purchase ad space both locally and globally. So they're lining themselves alongside the likes of Dax, Acast, or Audio Boom. This venture, which we can't find too much out about online yet, but we will keep you posted as and when we do, is going to be led by Audio Boom's former Senior Vice President of International Operations and Content Partnerships, Ruth Fitzsimmons. So they're in good hands. It'll be exciting to see what they do. They can definitely see that opportunity that anyone making content, especially in the UK, needs to focus on a US audience. That's where big gains are to be made. There's only 8 million or so podcast listeners in the UK. So to really hit those big download numbers, you've got to be looking at attracting a US audience. They're just that little bit more familiar with podcasting. So it's really interesting to see how podcasting has evolved over the last 6 months and where it's going now. The 2 big players, Apple and Spotify, clearly are trying to build their camps, win consumer attention and buy loyalty. But then we've also got to look at what people are doing to monetize podcasts, the likes of this new JV. And we can't really finish this without giving a mention to whether someone like Luminary or another of those Netflix for podcasting businesses might actually win in the long run. It's really hard to bet against them when you look at how successful things like Amazon and Prime and Hulu have been in recent years. Right, I think that's it for today's podcasting news. See you in the next one.